where horror lies.
Hey guys, Rob from Georgia here with you, aka VHS82 apostrophe with Lonnie, aka Tara and Tats. Of course, we're both from Body Bags, and it's a bit of a new format. It's May, and so we have this thing called an open weekend because we only have 5 slots now, Monday through Friday. So the weekends are open for us to try new things, do new things, and so tonight is an example of that. So, Lonnie, what are we talking about tonight?
Tonight we are going to rank our top 5 favorite John Carpenter films. So
Nice.
not an easy task though, because like what I've said before is just John Carpenter's like all his movies, in my opinion, all his movies are fantastic. So to just try to pick 5, and that was a chore, that was a task to do. So was not easy. But I think we both got a good fun list. I think everybody's going to be entertained when they see our choices.
I'm looking for. The only one I had a tough problem with was number 5. I had fours that would happen. I'm building up my 4K collection, but it's a small collection, so it's those that are close and near and dear to my heart get that upgrade mostly. So, but as it would happen, I just happened to have 4 in there from Mr. John Carpenter. And so, well, there's my 4 right there, easy. And then the problem becomes, dang, if I got a fifth 4K, what would it be? And so I'm like, I got this option, this option, this option. And then it's like, finally, I landed in one. And that, of course, is number 5. And usually with, that crazy fives that I had rolling for a while, I always usually have one outside looking in, but usually I did it chronological just so I wouldn't have to deal with the whole what one would be one, what would be two, what would be three. But tonight I actually thought that out, and I'm sort of surprised because this top 5 is not what it would be if you would have asked me, even maybe even a year ago, 2, 3 years ago. I don't think so because there's one movie in particular that has just um, grown on me in such a way, maybe more than most movies have grown on me, like this one. And we'll get into that. But so, what is Terror in Tats? Because you've changed your name. You used to be something else.
Yeah, yeah. I used to be Horror Heaven 77, and just things ended up happening, and I kind of needed a new format. And so and then the reason why is like I picked Terror and Test. Okay, it's like what are 2 of my passions in life? Number one, obviously terror movies, horror movies, things like that. And then another passion of mine, obviously, is tattoos. So and something I wish I could get more of, but just like right now, unfortunately, the economy isn't exactly the best, is it? So I'm lucky I'm even able to afford the movies I can. And oh, real quick, just real quick, I just wanted to mention, because you were talking about John Carpenter 4Ks and stuff. Oh man, it was irritating me because usually whenever somebody gets on my channel, that's mostly what I'm known for is talking about like movies coming out on 4K and 4K releases and stuff. And it was just several days ago that they mentioned that oh well, Scream Factory they released their June slate, and we're going to get RoboCop 2, and we're going to get RoboCop the remake, and we're going to get Species 2 and Matinee and stuff like this. And dang old Scream Factory, they're just really releasing a lot of stuff they put out on Blu-ray. Now they're putting it out on 4K, and I'm like, would people please stop crying and nagging about this? Because thinking about John Carpenter, they put out a number of John Carpenter movies on Blu-ray that I would really like to see get 4K releases. And so I kind of wish people would stop, like, stop releasing this stuff you put out on Blu-ray. It's like because I'm sure you would agree with me. It's like I think it would be really nice to have In the Mouth of Madness on 4K,
Yeah,
Assault on Precinct 13, Vampires.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's just like it's just kind of but just
I'll
so I
tell you
just
what would
kind
be
of
nice is a nice box set, the Apocalypse trilogy as a box set.
oh yes. Was Assault? Did I say Assault on Precinct 13? I may have said that one already. But Big Trouble in Little China, I would love to get that on 4K. So, but yeah, I just kind of wish people would stop, complaining about, Scream Factory putting stuff out that they put out on Blu-ray. It's like you kind of fear eventually this stuff's going to get to 4K anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway, just a little rant there. And so,
Well, and one write up, it's funny. I just still decompressing from my week in Florida. We got that Texas Chainsaw 4K coming down the pike. That's at the end of the year, isn't it? I think that's at the end of the year. That big giant box set thing. That's
with
the shape of the
VHS, yeah,
chainsaw, and got the VHS tape in there with the 4K, and
chainsaw packaging and stuff like that. So
man, and apparently when you open up the package, it revs up like a chainsaw. I can't imagine that lasts forever. It's like those gift cards you buy that have the Jaws theme or whatever, and they only last so many times you open. I don't know, but
unless there's somewhere like a little compartment or something, has like a little battery, like what you would have for a watch or something, you could switch out. I don't know, but
so might as well just say what inspired this to begin with is somewhere down the road, whenever it works out, we plan on taking a look at, respectively, my release from 88 Films on 4K, Anthropophagus and Absurd, as well as your, is it Severin, right?
well, that was the idea. It's like you
Yeah.
mentioned to me that you pre-ordered Anthropophagus and Absurd from 88 Films, and I was thinking about jumping on that and ordering those, but then I thought about it because someone had mentioned the thing is if 88 Films is doing it, it's like if you just wait a little bit, within a year's time, then eventually Severin will put out their own 4Ks of it. So it's like, when does those come out? Next month?
I hope it is. I thought it was first week of July. I was going to have it shipped to me.
I don't say yeah, but I'm thinking like probably like around. I'd be willing to bet that probably like somewhere around like Black Friday this year, Severin will probably come out and say, "Hey, we're gonna do our 4Ks of it." And
Right.
I thought, and we mentioned like, wouldn't it be fun if like you get your 88 Films, then I would turn around, I would buy the Severin when those come out, and then we would do a video where we could like, here you go, this is what you get with the 88 Films, this is what you get with the Severin, and all this kind of stuff, and like how do they look and everything else, and if you're fans of these, would you want to buy them or should you buy them, that kind of stuff. So we thought that'd be a fun video to make. And so then we
I
start,
think it will.
yeah,
So
then you start
that's
with some other ones too. So
yeah. So that's far enough down the road. We figure, why wait a year or something? Let's get something started now, and then by the time that moment comes, we'll already be well used to this and the various things maybe we come up with. And but it's going to be hard for me to keep up with you on 4K releases since that's not my little niche. But those opportunities may show up in weird ways. You never know, because we have our own little niches in terms of, and we'll see that in our top 5, I'm sure, in terms of who we turn to for 4K. So I know over the course of time we have talked about recently, where you went one direction on a 4K, I went another direction on a 4K in terms of labels and companies that put out this stuff. So anyways, John Carpenter is the main reason. So why don't you start off first? Where is your love for John Carpenter come from?
Okay, my love for John Carpenter was, I remember being very, very young, and my mother, she was very much into scary movies and stuff. My father, he was kind of sort of into scary movies, not much. He was more of an action movie Western kind of guy. But, my father ended up getting a love for John Carpenter, especially with, The Escape from New York and stuff like that. So that definitely. But I remember being very little, and the first time I watched Halloween, of course, it scared the living crap out of me. But at the same time, it's like I could not explain what the thing was with this movie. I was just absolutely mesmerized by it. Just the look of it, the musical score, just the whole feel of the film. Michael Myers, the look of him. Um, let's see, what else was there? I remember, that's the thing. Like people talk about, like female leads in the movie. It's like I can remember rooting for Jamie Lee Curtis and just loving her and just thinking she was like the best. And like if I ever had a babysitter, she would be the one I would want to be my babysitter and stuff like this. And just And just that movie, there was just like, and even to this day, it's just something about that movie. Now, I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't hate the Rob Zombie Halloweens, but there's just something. Halloween is just one of those movies. It just gets me every time. It's like it just has a power over me whenever. And then I started watching, John Carpenter's other movies like, The Thing and The Fog, and just like, man, I really like this guy's movies, and especially I love his music scores. I try to get every one of his albums, all his lost themes and everything else, and just over time, um and just I remember watching Prince of Darkness, and it was kind of like, okay, I'm not really sure I'm gonna like this movie, but I started watching. I was like, God, this is such a good movie. This is so good. It's genuinely scary. It's got Alice Cooper in it and everything else, and just on and on. And so, and it was just like all these things that John Carpenter did with his movies. And I know people say, well, he's just a B movie director. It's like, that may be so, but boy, is he a good one. It's like, and just he always made his movies look really good and really well made. And and even though he always like kind of put himself down for his storytelling and stuff like that, it's like I never felt that way. And just um there were maybe like a couple of his movies that like he wasn't very fond of. Like I remember I remember when he talked about doing Memoirs of an Invisible Man with Chevy Chase, and he said, like when he was first offered the job, and he said, like, oh my God, the idea of, Chevy Chase is the Invisible Man. He's like, if we play our cards right, this could be comedy gold. We could do something that could be right up there with, this could be right up there with Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, or Young Frankenstein, stuff like that. It's like we could make a movie that could really stand the test of time. He's like, then I go into my first meeting with Chevy, and like the first thing he says is like, yeah, this is not going to be a funny movie. I'm gonna play it straight. And Carpenter's like, oh shit, like, okay, this was not what I signed up for. But he's like, but the problem is like, he's like, yeah, I've already signed up to do this. I'm already under contract, so he had to go through with the movie. So I can understand why there were a couple of his movies he wasn't really fond of, um, but just yeah, I mean, uh, and also too, I thought that was kind of cool that two of his later movies, Vampires and Ghosts of Mars, they were both filmed pretty close to my backyard in New Mexico, and and just both of the. I know everybody rags on Ghosts of Mars, but I actually enjoy that film.
Yeah.
I actually have fun with it. Especially like at the end when they're the ghosts or the demons or whatever, they're taking over, and you got like Ice Cube and Natasha Henstridge. They're almost like cowboys walking off into the sunset, and Ice Cube's like, you make a hell of a good crook, and she's like, you make a hell of a good cop, and they're like, nah, let's just kick some ass. It's what we do best, It's just like he's always had that fun in his movies, and that's one thing I've always admired about Carpenter. Just his movies are meant to be fun first and foremost, and especially in this day and age when they keep trying to shove politics and everything. It's like when you get something that's just fun to watch, oh, it makes it so much better. So, but yeah, how about you? When did you start? Yeah.
Wow. It's funny. I said this episode wouldn't be really hard to prep for, because I think we both have, really deep love. But I was thinking, my journey with John Carpenter probably began, I would say, somewhere around 79 or 80. By 1980, I was just turning 10. So the 80s were really beginning to unfold before me in a way that, I mean, it was pretty magical, really. I mean, I had it pretty lucky as a kid in terms of just how I grew up. And but I remember Halloween might have just hit TV in that ABC Monday night at the movies, Sunday night at the movies, however it was. And you had that seasonal thing where every year Jaws played, on one weekend, or Wizard of Oz played, or it was that family time where there was nothing else outside of your 12 channels on your 25-inch console TV, and so it was time for the family. And well, Halloween, I wasn't quite old enough yet, so I remember. I think I had. I think I had chicken pox, and I was, back in my bedroom. I was told to go to bed. I could hear the music, and I would constantly sneak down the hallway and just peer around the corner. And I remember seeing the part where, the young kids getting bullied, and, and I see that and I hear the music and get yelled at, run back. 5 minutes later, come back. But then, a year or two rolls on, and, we get HBO. HBO is the main format for movies, and you're, watching them at home. And I remember in the HBO, you would get the HBO book, your monthly book, and Halloween time, and Halloween got, the big picture, either on the cover or inside a big picture. And it was usually, the scene where you had the sheet over him, and kind of an iconic moment in the movie, and one that, as a young kid, those images just start to get embedded in you even before you actually see the film. And, so, kind of getting, pieces of it here and there, but then something magical happened. The fog was made, and I want to say it was making, I think it was coming back around through the drive-in circuit, because I want to say it was my 13th birthday. So this is a couple years after its initial release, but I think it was doing a round with The Legacy. It was either my 12th or my 13th birthday. There was a double bill. They had The Legacy and they had The Fog. And so I got that as a birthday present. So I got to see that at the drive-in. So I got to see The Fog. And so my first full experience with Carpenter was seeing The Fog at the drive-in as a young kid. And then from there, of course, it just, as I grew a little bit older, I was able to, pretty much watch whatever I wanted to watch, or I would, be, you know, you know, deep into the HBO book or the TV guide, trying to, back then it was hard because it wasn't like you were building your own idea of what a filmography meant. You weren't really matching up directors with movies per se. I think as a young kid, you were just starting to see these movies, and then after a string of a few of them, you suddenly, that name John Carpenter continues to come up. Well, it helps when it's, John Carpenter's, Prince of Darkness, or John Carpenter's The Fog, or John Carpenter, so that helps, seeing that. So probably it begins early on just with my parents watching it on TV, and then, seeing The Fog at the drive-in.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, and then as the 80s roll on, the VHS revolution hits, of course, we're in the video stores, bringing home, stacks of movies. And I'm sure John Carpenter got in there quite a bit as his movies are, coming out. So, and then of course, Escape from New York, I mean, was pretty epic. Teasers, radio spots, always got me as a kid. When I was a kid, more than TV, even more than movies or TV, I had the radio on constantly. The radio was on, and so they always ran radio spots. And that's one reason why I love physical media, is a lot of times when they stick in the extras radio spots, it's that nostalgia, man. It's like going back and hearing a radio spot, like, I remember that. I remember hearing that on the radio when I was like, and that just lights up your imagination. You're just, when you hear a radio spot for The Fog, and you're just imagining, what is this? What is out there in the fog? What is going to, and that movie made a pretty big impression on me. But even things like, hearing the radio spot for the first time for The Gates of Hell, Lucio Fulci, I had no idea what that whole world was like at the time, but just hearing the radio spot on there was, it just lit you up, and almost nightmare inducing. I lost you, buddy.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
Yep.
there was a
All right. So, so the 80s was magical, between the video stores and building up this idea, of, who is this guy, John Carpenter, all of these movies, seeing The Fog on the drive-in. It ultimately adds up, to, a point in your life where you look back and you're like, dang, that guy really had a pretty big impact.
Yeah, the one thing that I thought was funny though is like, you talked about you were fortunate enough to see The Fog at the drive-in. I remember honestly, I don't think I saw The Fog until like I was like 19. And
Wow.
by then, yeah, I don't know why, just never got around to it. And I remember by then, I thought I was pretty cocky, and I thought like, yeah, there's not much, so I've seen it all, and there's nothing that's going to really scare me and stuff like this. And then my mother, one night she put it on, and we sat in the living room just hanging out together. She put it on. She had the lights turned off and everything else. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, John Carpenter, movie I haven't seen before, and just like, I was scared to death. I really was. I didn't think I could be scared, but it's just the music, the atmosphere,
Yes.
the whole, it's like, to me, it's like one of the most scariest images is like near the end of the movie when they're all gathered at the church and you can see like coming up the road, you can see the fog and you see the dark figures emerging and stuff like this. And, like breaking through the windows, you see the hands coming through the windows and everything is like, wow, this movie is genuinely scary. It's like,
Yes.
so, and that's another thing too. That's one of the reasons, like, man, it is so good when, like when, you think you're jaded, you think you've seen it all, you think there's nothing
Right.
that could shock you, scare you, or any of that kind of stuff. And when something does, like, you're pleasantly surprised by it. It's like,
Yes.
yeah, it scares me, but just when you think nothing can, something can come along and scare you, So, but oh yeah,
He was pretty good at that, when we were young and in that early youthful part of our life. And I was thinking I almost saw The Thing in the theater when I was 12. I had a buddy. I don't remember him that well for good reason. We had come up with a plan to, make our parents think that we were going to the theater to see Firefox, which was playing at the same time. And I don't know why I would have had to hide something like that, but at the time, but they were playing at the same time, so mom dropped us off and we went in with the full intention of getting tickets. And I'm not even sure how we would have got in there actually because it was a rated R film. But now that I think about it, Firefox, I think, oh, that no, actually that might have been PG, I think. Anyway, so we go in there and I have this, thing where I got to go stare at the movie poster and I see the thing up behind you. So I have to go in there and stare at the poster. That was maybe the worst mistake because my buddy comes up with me. The more he looks at the poster, the more he starts to get cold feet and he's like, I don't know, man, I don't know. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? This is going to be like the most epic, because I think Fangoria might have already been feeding us a little bit, like, this is, this is the moment, we've all been waiting for, kind of thing. And the more we sat there, going back and forth, he finally just, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't go in there. So we ended up seeing Firefox. And I think when my mom picked us up, I think she had, after the fact, kind of put one and one together, and so she thought she would have fun with us after the movie. And so she's so how was Firefox? And I was like, what do you want to know? And so 5 minutes into that, she's like, "You really saw Firefox?" I'm like, "Yes, I saw Fire. I didn't want to see Firefox." I'm like, and I hated. He was. I don't. I think I avoided that kid as much as I could after that. He might have been like, he was a friend of mine, but he was probably the kid of one of my mom's friends, and that's how I knew him.
mhm.
And but I was that close, man. I was that close. But I did finally get to see it on the big screen a few years back. I saw it with my oldest son Sam, and so that was, so finally I got that out of the way and finally seen that. And so that was a long time coming. So real quick, how many John Carpenter movies have you seen in the theater? Original
Uh,
ones.
actually, this is going to sound pretty pathetic, but honestly, I only saw one John Carpenter movie in the theater, and that was Village of the Damned.
Wow.
Just never had never had an opportunity to see any of the others in the theater. That's why, like, here a while back when I set up my projector, and it's like I was like, okay, I started, just here on the wall. I took all my posters down and everything else. I just started watching. It was like this is as close to seeing them in a theater as I'm going to get. So I just started watching a bunch of them. I watched like Halloween and The Thing and uh, Escape from New York and stuff like that. I just started watching a bunch of them. So it's like that was as close as I ever got to see him. But yeah, sadly, yeah, uh, it's like I remember I wanted to go see In the Mouth of Madness in the theater, and for whatever reason, the little town we were living in New Mexico, for whatever reason, they never got it in. So we didn't get to see that one. Let's see what else. Like Vampires, Ghosts of Mars. Well, by the time that was the problem. Like there was a period of time, the small town we were living in, our theater closed. So there were movies like Vampires or Ghosts of Mars. Couldn't see them anyway. We had no theater to go to. And then before we moved from New Mexico to Arizona, they opened up a new theater, and we went in there a couple of times. Me and my brother, we went in there a couple of times. We went to go see Force Awakens, and there was something else we went to go see. But yeah. So as sad as that is to say, I only got to see one Carpenter movie, and I know people would be like, "And you call yourself a John Carpenter fan?" But yeah, unfortunately, I only got to see one, and it's that one is considered like one of his least popular movies. But I didn't care. I still liked it, and I'm still glad. So Village of the Damned still holds a soft spot in my heart, because it's the one Carpenter movie I did get to go see in the theater, and of course, like Christopher Reeve, he was my Superman and stuff
Yeah.
like this. So yeah, that movie does hold a place in my heart. So.
It's hard for me to remember. I think I probably wouldn't be surprised if The Fog was probably the only one I got to see in its first release on the big screen. But I was lucky enough later on in the last 10 years or so, I've seen Halloween on its anniversary release. And that was freaking epic. I mean, after already having seen it a million times, finally getting to see it on the big screen. Of course, I finally got a chance to see The Thing on the big screen. Most recently, I saw Escape from New York, which was supposedly in its 4K format. And even at the beginning, you saw Studio Canal's emblem comes up, and I thought, oh wow, we're gonna get Studio Canal's 4K because that's the one I've actually been wanting to get at some point. And I don't know what the issue was. I don't know if it was the screen or however it was being presented, but I was, to say the least, I was not impressed with in terms of the transfer. In terms of what I thought I was gonna see. Now, just seeing the movie on the big screen, that in of itself was a treat. I mean, I worked a little hard to just get past the whole trick because at first I was like, wow, what is this? I thought I was going to see this pristine 4K kind of thing,
Yeah.
but I quickly moved beyond that and just kind of like, okay, just enjoy the movie. You've never seen us on the big screen, and it's not hard. It's not hard to get into that groove. But yeah, just a few. Really, unfortunately, um, it's weird. John Carpenter came at that weird time where you either got it or you didn't get it, and eventually you saw it on VHS. I mean,
Oh yeah.
you saw it like that. So, well, you want to get started on our?
Let's go ahead and do this. So
You want to go first? You want me to go first?
you go ahead and go first.
All right. So we'll just kind of go back and forth, back and forth. Number five. Number five from 1980. This is the one I had a hardest time with, and I was juggling between like three movies. And when it finally came down to it, I just thought, every time I put this thing in, I absolutely love it from the very beginning to the very end. And it does hold kind of a special place in but I've never really thought of it in terms of, does it have a place in that top five in terms of Carpenter? So I guess for the moment, as of now, it's there at number five. And that is, of course, They Live. And that is the Scream Factory collector's edition, which is a pretty epic release from them, fully loaded, a lot of extras. Well, I shouldn't say. I mean, actually, it doesn't have a lot. It's got his commentary with Roddy Piper, and that fight scene is freaking epic, though. That's got to be one of the greatest fight scenes I've ever. And just and what I find fascinating about this movie is I find fascinating with a lot of whether you're talking John Carpenter and some of his early movies or even music, some of the, some of these movies were made for a certain audience, but sometimes I think these movies, they age so well. In a movie like this, in terms of, get into it, but in terms of just the political landscape and how things seem to feel today, it almost seems like some of these movies are more appropriate for this moment than even the moment when they first came on the scene. It's a weird thing, but Roddy Piper, man, that movie, it is, yeah. So that falls into my number 5. They Live.
Okay. All right. So my number 5, this one is going to be kind of surprising, but well, probably not that surprising because people who've watched Body Bags long enough, they watch my videos, they know I'm a big Stephen King fanatic. That gives it away. Christine. And just this was a movie like I came so close. We could have watched this in the theater. My parents took me to see A Christmas Story, and in a way, I kind of wish we did go see this because we went to go see Christmas Story again. So we saw it twice in the theater. So it's kind of like, in a way, it's like looking back. It's like I wish we could have gone to see this the first time and then go see Christmas Story when we went to see it a second time. But yeah, I love this movie. I mean, the car. How could you? You can't sit there and look at that car and be like, you gotta be like, I want that car. I would give anything to have that car. That car is so beautiful and stuff. Like I don't want it possessed, but but everything, the look of the movie and just the music and I mean, you got Keith Gordon, his performance, Arnie Cunningham. I mean, is like so great, and Alexandra Paul like has to be one of the most beautiful women you've ever seen in your life, and but just yeah, everything about it and some of the humor and the villains are like you can't wait to see like Buddy Repperton and his gang. Can't wait to see them get their justice and like and some of the effects that they did. Some of like I know it's like just reverse photography, but it's like the part where like Arnie is like telling Christine, okay, show me, and then you see the car heal itself.
Right.
It's like, man, that was impressive. Even though it's kind of just camera tricks and stuff like that, but and to see the car like driving on fire for that long a period of time and everything else,
Yeah.
it's all like it's amazing that that stunt was actually done and it's practical and you think like how is it that the stuntman didn't die from doing that? It's like they had to time that so carefully and everything else and just so much about it. And of course, it's based on a Stephen King story. And it's just, oh man. So yeah, Chrissy is definitely high on my list, and especially as a Stephen King fan. So
Yeah.
to me, like Stephen King, John Carpenter, that's like Reese's peanut butter cups. Like, chocolate peanut butter just goes together. Number 5, Christine.
Nice. Number 4, I did mention earlier, it is the only one I probably saw in its moment at the drive-in from 1980. Of course, this is the pure definition of comfort food for me, and that is, of course, The Fog, the Studio Canal release, 4K release of this. The sound is just absolutely stunning, maybe even more than the picture, but the picture is awesome. But the sound, there's just something the way it comes through on the sound bar. But this movie, man, this movie might be one of the greatest ghost stories, that infected me as a child and never left. I've always had a deep, deep love. I probably had one of my early crushes, was probably on Adrienne Barbeau, and I don't know what kid didn't, for obvious reasons. The cinematography, of course, Dean Cundy, the lighthouse scenes, going down the lighthouse with all that wind. And it's funny being down in Florida. Uh, the other night, we went down to the beach for the last time, and it just was abnormally, I think, extra windy coming off the ocean. Now we're just on a beach, and it's cold, and the wind is so. I mean, the wind is moving you. I don't know how she walks down that long walkway. That is, to me, absolutely amazing that they somehow pull that off. Um, just the just everything about this movie. I mean, it's amazing that it sits at number 4, but I love, and I probably can say the same about the ones that come after this. But this is one of the ones I watch so often. I can put this on anytime, watch it. I mean, it don't matter. I mean, the score. Um, just God, what's his name there? What's his name? John Houseman, of course, his little cameo at the beginning. Um, trying to think. Of course, you got Jamie Lee Curtis and her mom Janet Leigh in this too together, which they don't have. I don't think they have any on-screen time together.
Well,
But what's that?
they do at the very end, like
And,
when they're in.
yeah, um, yeah, just this movie, man, is just I don't know, man. It never gets old. Just the visual effects with the fog. The fog is its own character in the movie. I remember when the remake came out, my daughter, me and her were sharing. We shared a lot of time going to, some scary movies at the theater together. This was the remake was one of the ones she dragged me to the theater. It's like, come on, Dad, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. I'm like, you realize this movie's gonna be horrible, right? It's gonna be absolutely horrible from start to finish. And it was, but I mean, I still had a fun time with her and everything. But she even agreed with me after the fact that yeah, there's no way it was going to match up with. A funny thing too, I was just reading in his trivia a little bit. He apparently, he said, what was he? He understood. I think he said he understood why Halloween got an R rating, but could not understand why The Fog got an R rating. Thought it should have been a PG rating. I agree with him. R is way too heavy for a movie like this. I mean, you make a movie like this today, and I mean, it's easily PG. But yeah, man, I mean, that is the pure definition of comfort food for me. The Fog, love it, always will.
Okay, my number four, and funny enough, it's the same name as our channel, Body Bags.
Nice.
Yeah, this one here is like I remember when I was looking through his filmography and everything, and then I forgot about this one. Then I remember it's like, well, wait a minute. It's like then I start. I remember around like the early 1990s when word of this, came from Fangoria magazine that this was getting ready to come out. It was going to be a TV movie, a horror anthology in the vein of Tales from the Crypt and everything else. And I just like, I was salivating. I could not wait to see this. It had everything in it that I wanted. As somebody who's a huge Tales from the Crypt fan, and and it's like, and John Carpenter himself is playing essentially the Crypt Keeper, because in this movie he's the coroner, and and then okay, like it's a horror anthology, like all these different bodies under these body bags represent a different horror story and everything else. And I wanted to see it. And then as soon as it came out on VHS, because we couldn't get, I don't know why we couldn't get Showtime in our area, but as soon as it came on VHS, I went to the store, I grabbed that something. I was like, I gotta see this. And it's just, like it was just so much of everything I could want, like the wraparound segments and the two first stories directed by John Carpenter, the third one directed by Toby Hooper, and then the cast that and not to mention the fun cameos that are in this, a cameo from the late great Wes Craven, excuse me, Sam Raimi does a cameo. Even Toby Hooper himself does a little cameo with Tom Arnold, Roger Corman, and just the cast that you had in this. You had David Naughton from American Werewolf in London. You had Robert Carradine. You had David Warner, Deborah Harry. Twiggy, Mark Hamill, John Agar, and just on and on, and just and just oh man, and I watched this and I was so thrilled by it, and like I said, to see John Carpenter essentially playing the Crypt Keeper, and it's just like it was everything I could want and more. And that was the sad part because this was meant to, the idea of this is meant to be like a pilot for a TV series, which unfortunately never got made. But just oh yeah, and I absolutely adore this movie, and I'm happy we got what we got. And then too, like I love the Toby Hooper segment because like the one about Mark Hamill with the eye, and Mark Hamill does such a great job acting in that, and it's and like everything with Toby Hooper is just he always does his things are always so unsettling. His movies and everything, like from the get go, you always get not disturbing, but just you're going to be unsettled when you watch something Toby Hooper, and it always happens. But just yeah, just everything about my love for horror anthologies and stuff like that. So yeah, so number four has to be Body Bags for me.
Nice. Nice. That's surprising. That's surprising. That's awesome though. Number three. Number three is a huge surprise for me because there was I don't know, maybe even a year ago or so. If you would have asked me, number one John Carpenter film, I probably would have said this one. Probably. It would have been shoulder to shoulder with another one. But it sits at number three, which just blows my mind away. But from 1978, of course, is Halloween. And I could have showed the 4K, but thought I have run with this the 25th anniversary edition double disc forever. And man, Halloween, Halloween is one of those movies, no matter how many times you go back and watch it, having seen it on the big screen, of course, it seems like moments that you see on your TV just seem a few seconds longer when you see it on a big screen. I'm not sure how. It's just a weird thing, but this franchise in of it just has probably, it never gets old with me, man. It never gets old. It's amazing. I can go back and just throw on, number five, number four, whatever number is three, whichever. Of course, the Rob Zombies, movies I have a huge passion for. But every time, man, you go back to the original and there is just, I don't know, man. It just, I don't know. As soon as you see Mustafa Akkad's name at the beginning, it's kind of like when I was a kid, I would rent, like first time I rented Stage Fright, and I think you had Film Mirage at the beginning. There was something about these production company names that would come up, and Medusa, or as a kid you'd be like Mustafa Akkad. You're like, holy crap, man, I'm in for something. And and it just, I mean, I don't know what I mean. We've all seen this movie a million times. For it to be at number three is kind of a surprise for me. But I don't know, man. It's so epic. I was watching part two. I put on part two the other day, and just it kind of recaps the beginning a little bit, or the end of the first movie a little bit, and just that iconic moment where she's at the end, where she's just sort of leaning against the doorway, and he's just lying there, and he just slowly comes up. I mean, I don't know if anyone had ever done some of the things, the dolly shots, it's just the whole widescreen feel of his movies. His movies always feel bigger than they are, and it's just the whole idea of bringing the boogeyman to life in a way. I don't know if anyone has done this quite like John Carpenter.
Right.
It's I don't know, man. It is. I don't know if it's my favorite slasher, but it has that place in my heart that will never, be. It's just amazing to me. So number three, the infamous Halloween.
Now, number three for me, I just reviewed this for BodyBags actually, but I absolutely adore this movie, and that's Big Trouble in Little China. Just there was this movie absolutely blew me away the first time I watched it, mainly because I admit at the point when I watched this, I was pretty young. I really hadn't seen that many, like Japanese horror films or Chinese horror film, Asian horror films in general. Just really hadn't had that chance to see that many of them. And just this whole idea about, Japanese folklore and Japanese legends and ghost stories and things like this. And I thought it was fascinating, and just, and I like the fact that, that they really try to be as authentic and respectful to the Chinese culture as they could be and everything. I'm sure nowadays everybody like, stereotypes or whatever, but, and then also too, just, the fact that like to see Kurt Russell be so brave as to, because at this point, in my opinion, now Kurt Russell is a great actor, but in my honest opinion, I think the movies he did best were the ones he did with John Carpenter. Jack Burton, Snake Plissken, R.J. McCready, things
Yeah.
like those are his absolute best characters he's ever done. and just, and I was so blown away to see, somebody actually poke fun at himself and poke fun at this is in the 80s when you had all your, big 80s movie tough guys. You had Stallone and Schwarzenegger, Chuck Norris, Harrison Ford, all these guys. And, Kurt Russell did a number of these movies himself. And he's actually like poking fun at it, and you could tell he's having a blast making this movie and everything else. It's like, I mean, how many movies do you see where a guy kisses a girl, then he goes in to have the showdown with the big bad guy, and he's got lipstick on his mouth, and stuff like that. And he's trying to be all badass. He's got lipstick on it. And just so much of this movie blew me away. And there's just so much stuff I had never seen before. And it was just like, oh my God. And just, the martial arts scenes and the creature. Now, yeah, some of the creature effects may not have held up over the years, but still, it's like, it was just so much fun. And just, this movie is just a roller coaster ride from beginning to end and everything else. And even though it's not really horror, it's got horror elements and
Right.
all that stuff. And it was just so unique for its time and everything. And man, I could watch this movie like 8 times a day or night. I just, it's like you said, comfort food. It's a comfort food movie for me. So yeah, that would have to be my number 3 is Big Trouble in Little China.
Number two is probably the big surprise on my top 5. A couple of years ago, and a lot of it has to do with a podcast that I've recently, in this last year, that I've sort of fallen into, occult and symbolism in popular pop culture. I think it's Isaac Weishaupt, I think is his name. Anyways, he did a podcast devoted to the John Carpenter's apocalyptic trilogy, and he looked at the 3 films separately and did a sort of overview as an intro segue in, and then this one podcast. So for this particular movie, I have probably listened to this podcast as much as I've repeat listened to any podcast. And I don't know, this movie is one of these John Carpenter films that was always in the background, always back there. As a kid, I'd rent it on VHS, and I really dug it, but it was sort of it was one of those films that was sort of in the background. Now it's at number 2, and I don't know, man. A year from now, it could actually be maybe number 1. I don't know, but Prince of Darkness. This man, it's so Lovecraft in the sense of something, attemptably trying to break into this world, and it's a confined film, of course, in the church setting. Of course, Alice Cooper, we said his name earlier, and just, I don't know, man. It's just from the very beginning. I think the opening title sequence takes like 10-12 minutes, I think, before you're actually into the story without seeing, when you finally get to, directed by John Carpenter. That, I don't even know what you really call it, that pillar, that monolith there in the basement of the church, just the movement of the fluid. I remember just looking at that and just being absolutely spellbound at times, and even more so just, what's his name there? The kid from Simon and Simon, he's the lead in here, Jameson Barker. It's funny, I remember some of these people from TV shows that I always watched, but one of my favorite characters is actually Victor Wong's character as the professor, and the segments that he teaches. I love it. I love when he talks about quantum physics and order in the universe, and there is order, but it's not what we thought it was, and and I love just the interaction between him and Donald Pleasance. You've got hard science, quantum physics on the one side, and then of course you've got the church on the other side, and it's it's not square in terms of its biblical approach, but it is astounding sort of science fiction weird movie about possibilities, and what if this anti-God, even had an opportunity to step in, and everything goes from light to darkness. You have the messages from the future. I love the dream sequences, that are shared. Um, and it's of course the very end where, uh, Donald Pleasance thinks he's, won the day, and of course we know at the end, well, there are possibilities yet. And I think it's one of those movies. Sometimes, I kind of wish maybe John would have moved forward on it, but I think mostly I'm glad he didn't. I'm just like the idea of possibilities. And
Yeah.
I've also, I love it when movies wake you up to other movies that you weren't really aware of. And I was always curious, the opening writing credits. I think he writes as Martin Quatermass. And I was really unfamiliar with the Quatermass Experiment, the Pit, and the other one in there. And so, as a result of this movie, and really digging deep as a result of that podcast, this movie has just taken on, in this last year, a whole new world, like, for me. And now with it on 4K and how it looks on 4K, I'm sure you got this release, right?
I do.
Yeah, it is absolutely. I mean, it is just beautiful. It looks about as well, I think, as any of his movies could possibly look. And then, some of the neat bug effects there, and just the gore, and the kills, and just, I think, the claustrophobia of just this unrelenting doom that
Yeah.
is just coming down, and there's nothing, no one, but it's this race where the church and science are sort of kind of working together hand in hand to try
Yeah.
to pull the veil back. And it's just, I don't know. It's just, I don't know where this movie's been my whole life. It's been there, but it's not been on the back burner. And now it's one of those movies that is squarely on the front burner. And I just love it, man. I absolutely love it.
Okay, my number two, and the reason I know people are gonna be like, "Hey, you call yourself a John Carpenter fan," but I'm putting this at my number two, probably because I'm willing to bet you probably put this at your number one. So I figured just for something a little bit different. So my number two is The Thing.
Nice.
And I mean, do I really need? That's the thing. I could sit here and tell about why I love this movie, but what am I really going to say that everybody hasn't already said before? It's just it's a masterpiece. Everything about this movie just works. The cast is fantastic. I mean, there's not one weak link in the cast. Kurt Russell, Wilford Brimley, Keith David, all of them. You know, Donald Moffat. Um, Ennio Morricone's score is absolutely one of the best scores ever. I mean, so much so that Tarantino ended up borrowing music cues for Hateful Eight. And also too, Kurt Russell is in Hateful Eight, and well, we talked about that on the chat.
Yep.
Once talking about like honestly, like because Tarantino had mentioned that the thing was like a inspiration for him for Reservoir Dogs. It's all like you could definitely tell that when you watch Hateful Eight, you can say, oh my god, yeah, the thing definitely through and through. Kurt Russell in an isolated place in a winter storm with all these people, you don't know who's who. Got Ennio Morricone's music score and everything else. So yeah, you could definitely tell Tarantino was inspired by the thing. And just, I mean, of course, chef's kiss to Rob Bottin's special effects and the fact that he worked so hard on it that he ended up having to go to a hospital afterward because he worked so hard. And then Stan Winston being the amazing, wonderful guy that he was, coming in and
Yeah.
doing the dog puppet effect and everything else, and then he wouldn't even take credit.
Right.
He's like, no, I'm not going to take credit. It's Rob's movie. Let him have the credit and everything else. And that's the thing. It's like nowadays, like that's the thing. Like, well, you and Glenn and Jason have all talked about the prequel to the thing and talked about how like they were going to try to mesh kind of like CGI with practical effects, and it seemed like
Yeah.
CGI kind of won at the end of the day, and that there were some practical effects that if they use it, it probably will look better
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And and just the fact that all this was all completely practical effects, and it holds up. And even in 4K, because I've said it on my channel a zillion times, it's like whenever you watch a movie on 4K, it's like practical effects can be made or broken by 4K, because 4K will definitely get you to see the details, and if there's any kind of chinks in the hardware, you're going to see it. And the fact that Bottin's effects still look phenomenal on 4K, like they're still flawless.
Yeah.
In 4K and everything else, and just everything about this movie, it's practically a perfect film. There's not one thing I can think of wrong. There's not one, there's not one complaint I can make against this movie. Not one gripe I have against it. And then the fact too is it's fun because too now people can go on, and people have been, people go on and they discuss it and they talk about, like, over the years, like, well, who do you think was this person the thing, or at the end, was McCready the thing, was Childs the thing, and everything. And it's fun when you have a movie that you could talk about and just theorize about and stuff like that, and just and just like I said, there's this, I mean, like I said, it's like there's not really much else I could say about this movie that hasn't been said. And and so this movie has some of the best lines in it too. I mean, everybody always remembers, you got to be fucking kidding me. And they're, I know you gentlemen have been through a lot, but when you have the time, I'd like to not spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch. And also too, Wilford Brimley, I'll kill you.
Yes.
Not what he said, but the way he said it. But
Yeah.
But yes, I know, like, the only reason like I said, I didn't put this at my number ones, but because I'm probably pretty sure you did. But anyway, so yeah, that would be my number two, would be The Thing.
Nice. What release is that?
It's Universal. It's just
Okay.
this was a Best Buy exclusive steelbook.
Okay.
Which willing to bet you, because now, like what I was saying on the chat the other night, it looks like Walmart, because now they're taking over from Best Buy. I'm willing to bet you it's like, just bide your time. If you want this, just bide your time. This will probably be sitting on a Walmart shelf pretty soon. However, I would love, because Arrow did their big box Blu-ray treatment of it here a while back. I would love if Arrow would do one for this. I would, even though I've got it already, I would snag that sucker in a second if I can get it. They do a big box for The Thing and everything. It's like, I know, it's like, dude, why you keep rebuying the same movies over and over again? But something like that, it's like, oh, they do the big box collector edition of The Thing, I got to jump on it. So no doubt about that. So that's my number two.
Well, number one. I can't wait to see what your number one is. Now I'm intrigued to see what number one is. Yeah, well, it has to be, right. Speaking of Arrow, the Arrow edition.
That's I want
and,
them for the 4K.
The thing sits at number one in my top five, just best movies. Right. I mean, Jaws is right there. Jaws sits at two, and then, they sort of interchange with one another. But the thing, I should have seen this at 12, and I didn't. I was robbed of a glorious moment to sit in the theater at 12 years old and see this thing. And I didn't, but thankfully I got to see it later on. But I have such an absolute love affair with this movie, and such that I almost absolutely hate anyone who tries to do an alternative, art for the covers. But this is the Arrow. This is one of the first times I saw it, and I'm like, all right, that works for me. I like that. There's been a few that have been done that have been absolutely horrific. I'm not going to repeat what you said, but I think talking about Rob Bottin. I love I think the 80-minute documentary Terror Takes Shape, which if no one has ever seen that, that is worth that documentary. I mean, this was a movie, and I probably got 20 releases of this across, from VHS, DVD to Blue to 4K. I mean, if there's a release for this, I probably got most of them. I think I'm sure there's a few out there I don't have, but it's one of the last movies, that the practical effects, but going out, in a rare location, and actually a year beforehand nearly, and building your set and then waiting for the winter to come in and then going up with your film crew to shoot, in a real location like that. And the stories of, them being out on that, hearing Kurt Russell talk about, because he's an avid hunter, and just how absolutely beautiful it was. And, it's an ensemble, piece, it's an all male cast, which, I think it's great counterpart, maybe The Descent with a woman cast, which I think that movie is a good, fun movie. But I love it in that terror take shape. I love it when Bottin is telling his stories about what it was like working on that film. And he's talking, I think it's the Norris effect, and it goes bad. And, and of course, everything bursts into flames, because of all the fumes, toxic fumes of all the chemicals they've got rammed into him.
Yeah.
For just the effect. And when, they had a flame too close, and I think, that creates a fireball, and, the whole room, about goes. And of course, Rob, realizing what this means as the special effects artist, just stands there looking at this, he's saying, and he said, John's just like, don't just stand there, you idiot, put it out. And Rob's like, well, we got a problem. And John's like, what do you mean we got, what's the problem? We need to do this again. He's like, no, you don't understand. We got to rebuild this thing. We got to redo it from scratch. And that is the, it sheds light on the hardships from time to time when an effect did not work and they had to go back, or they were willing to go back and redo it. But those effects, stand the test of time. And even today, this movie probably has the best practical effects. In fact, funny, true story. Sam, my oldest son at work, works at a grocery store. He actually got a fellow coworker to watch The Thing for the very first time. He bailed at the dog kennel scene. It was too much for him. And, I think, well, that's saying something about something. I don't know if it just says something about me, being as desensitized, to all the films I've seen over my life. But I just thought to myself, really, you bailed at the dog kennel scene? I mean, and it makes you wonder, really, outside of, our circle, it makes you wonder just how many people in younger generations really haven't seen this. And it makes you wonder, what they would think if they saw it, in its, entirety. I think one of the great, the Palmer sequence for me might be one of the, in terms of practical effects, might be my favorite. I absolutely love the Palmer effect. But you're right, the lines throughout the entire movie. I love, one of my favorite lines is actually when McCready's in there with Blair, having secured him in that shed area, and Blair's trying to talk to him, and about trust, and McCready's just like, "I'll tell you what, why don't you just trust in the Lord?" But when you come back to him a little bit later on, he's got a noose hanging up behind him, and nothing is said of it. It's just there in the background. And it's a great thing. I've read the short story a zillion times. I think the prequel, which is really from a forensical point of view, had awesome potential. I think the studio really freaking screwed up that movie, unfortunately. John has said that perhaps, there's a chance he could sit in the director's chair again for a sequel to The Thing. I don't know what to make out of it. I mean, on one hand, I would freaking love it if he could somehow, catch lightning in a bottle a second time.
Yeah.
But my great fear is studio interference, and everyone's going to be, too many hands in the pot. And I don't even know if he's got it within him to actually, that's one of the things too. One of his famous quotes talks about, how funny it is to him that film buffs, maybe not so much like me and you, because I think me and you really appreciate the horrors of studio interference. He said, but the general film buff, there's this notion that if you're a film director, that somehow that's the greatest thing in the world, and boy, I wish I could be a film director. And he's like, man, if you actually knew what it really was like to actually endure going through an entire film, having to work with a studio and having to deal with all the garbage. And we've heard these stories a million times over, even from, uh, Dario Argento's work on Inferno with the studio, all across the board. Rob Zombie's infamous, his stories with the Weinsteins. I mean, it doesn't matter who it is. Everyone has their story about how the studios crept in, or it's just I think. But the thing is, you're right. It's flawless. I think from the very opening title sequence to its conclusion and then end credits, it is as flawless as any film could ever hope to be. And I think it is the movie that most hurts John in terms of it's not getting the success initially when it came out. And but unlike most movies that come out so long ago, it's probably talked about as much, if not more, than a lot of the movies that came out in '82. And there were some good ones. '82 was a good year for film. But the thing today is rest as something that is special. It is absolutely special. So I can't wait anymore, man. What's your number one?
Well, just a second. Okay. But yeah, just talking about, it's like, The Thing, like you said, yeah, that came out, I mean, let's think about it. It's like, okay, The Thing didn't do well in its initial run at the theater, but think about it. I mean, the movie was going up against E.T. and Blade Runner. So, I mean, the movie definitely had some stiff competition. So, but it's like now, honestly, I could be wrong, but I think people talk about The Thing more now than they talk about E.T. or Blade Runner, But anyway, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm actually kind of surprised you didn't already figure out what my number one was going to be. Halloween. Halloween. Like I said, just this movie to me, like I said, this movie just holds a spell over me. And just like I said, I absolutely love the first three movies. Just I think what John Carpenter and Deborah Hill did was amazing. And no slur against Deborah Hill. By God, she was one of the best. And I rest in peace. It's like it's so sad because she went on as producer. She went on and made some amazing movies. The Dead Zone, Clue, like all the Fisher King. Like my God, she was one of the best. And just but just there's just something, like I said, something about this movie. It just has a spell over me. And every time like it comes on, I got to sit down and watch it. I just, I had to get tattoos of it. I don't think you can see that, but I got, I can't really show it on camera. I was like, I got Michael Myers here and I got like the silver shamrocks and everything else. But just this movie is like everything about just the way it's shot, the way it looks. The one thing that always kind of bugs me is just when this is a small gripe, I know, but it's like, when people say like, the thing that I hate so much about the original Halloween is it never explains anything about Michael Myers. And it's like, yes, it does. Don't you? It's like at the end of the movie when Laurie says it was the boogeyman and he says, as a matter of fact, it was. And then to emphasize his point, he goes and looks out over the balcony and Michael's gone. And that's the thing that's always bugged me about, not so much like Halloween 2, but it is, I admit, a teeny bit of a gripe I have with the David Gordon Green trilogy. And I understand like when Rob did his Halloween movies that he really was trying to do something different with it. And I can't fault him for that because, I mean, look, John did the same thing with The Thing, because, he didn't want to just remake Christian Nyby or Howard Hawks, depending on your, interpretation. But, he just didn't want to just make that movie over again. And so he said, the short story is pretty different from the original movie. So let's try to do a more faithful adaptation of the short story and everything. And so what I like is that, Rob said, okay, I'm going to take elements from John's movie and I'm going to do my own thing with it. So I do appreciate that. And I like sometimes when they do that. But it's just, it's just when everybody keeps coming up, it's like, oh, he didn't explain it. And then they get, it's like, to me, it's kind of like, it makes perfect sense. It's like Michael Myers is supposed to be the boogeyman. He's supposed to be
Right.
evil, and that's why they call him the Shape, and it's like, so I understand like why Rob Zombie was trying to personalize Michael Myers, but the fact is like you think like David Gordon Green in the trilogy like would have kind of explored a little bit more the more supernatural element of Michael Myers. And instead it seems like he tries very much to try to humanize Michael Myers as much as possible too. You know, at least that's my take from it. But and just to me that was always something that always bothered me. Is just like they never really explored much the kind of boogeyman element of Michael, and they always just seem to try to make him as like human as possible. But and just like just the whole feel of this movie, the look of it, the way, I mean, Dean Cundy's cinematography is bar none just pure excellence, and the same thing for The Thing as well. I mean, just every movie Carpenter shot phenomenal. But just the way the movie looks and just the slow build and the way now it's like it's pretty ballsy. I know a lot of people nowadays probably look at this and they're like, it's boring, it's not bloody, it's not gory and stuff like that. But I think it's my personal opinion. I think it's impressive when people can make a genuinely scary movie and not have to rely on blood and gore and stuff like that. I think that's one of the reasons why James Wan is so beloved now, because James Wan can make a genuinely frightening, scary movie, and he doesn't need blood and gore to do it,
Right.
and stuff. So, I think for a lot of people, it's kind of like, well, blood and gore, that's kind of the easy way out, you know. But just the music and just the performances and stuff, it's like Donald Pleasance. I think, Donald Pleasance to me was a hero back in the day. Just Jamie Lee Curtis. I mean, for her first role, I think she did amazing. And of course, like I said earlier in the video, yeah, she was like, the kind of babysitter you wanted, and definitely, could be one of your childhood crushes and stuff like that. Just all of it, just and just whatever it is, this movie, the music, it just always casts a spell on me. And whenever it comes on, it's just like I have to sit and watch it, and I just always do. And of course, like this and Trick or Treat, I have to double feature every Halloween. And of course I do. I adore Halloween 2 and 3. 4 I love. 5 and 6, 6 to me, just my opinion, is the worst one. But I mean, I can even get some enjoyment out of Resurrection. What does that tell you? But, the Rob Zombie movies, I enjoy those. I still do enjoy the David Gordon Green trilogy, but just to me, like this, I don't know, just this movie is just one of my absolute all-time favorites. And so, yeah. So I kind of figured when I mentioned this earlier, I figured you'd be like, well, I know what his number one movie is going to be. So.
Well, it's funny, about, not letting in on enough information in terms of background. Bob Clark gives a great antidote to that. If you listen to him talk on Black Christmas, you get the whole entire backdrop, really. I mean, whether it's intentional or not intentional, but the conversation that he has with, John Carpenter has with Bob Clark about, hey, are you going to do a sequel to Black Christmas? It's like, no, probably not. Are you sure? Are you sure? No, I'm not going to do one. Well, if you did do one, what would you do? And when and when he explains what he would do theoretically, that really becomes Halloween.
He laid out the groundwork for Halloween.
Yeah. So so really, you could really have kind of fun, sitting there thinking, Halloween is the sequel to Black Christmas. This is the killer who's been, hidden away in an insane asylum for what he did, and now he's broken out one night, and except it's not Christmas, it's Halloween. And so I always, I've always had fun anytime I've had Bob Clark's commentary track on, and every time he tells that story, I always have fun with that. and just thinking in my mind, it's that, and or if I'm watching Black Christmas, I'm sometimes thinking about angst for some reason in terms of the killer. Seeing more of the killer on film and angst reminds me of just the nature of who he is, as a killer in Black Christmas. But you can have fun with that kind of stuff, but there is a close sort of, weird relationship between Halloween, in terms of concept, and Black Christmas as we see it. And I mean, I think it's one of those where, who doesn't have every, Halloween film that comes out, I mean, just to, and I've been enough critic, on the David Gordon Green trilogy, but I think, there's flaws in that trilogy, but I think there's great things in that trilogy. I think
I agree.
John Carpenter's renewed score, I think is one of the greatest things and it's, I think it's been part of what's helped him renew, part of his music career, being able to go out on tour with his son and share that part of his life is, I mean, a great story. Who knows if it's there or not there, if not for this, trilogy that comes out. So, I mean, there's always, as a horror fan, as a Halloween fan, I mean, Halloween is probably one of those unique franchises that regardless of who you are, you can come into that franchise at almost any different angle and find something that you'll hold near and dear to your heart, whether it's something that, any one of the directors has crafted throughout its, time. It's a unique it's a unique franchise, and
It is.
and Halloween 3, I mean, I saw that on the big screen probably, I don't know, last 5 years or so, and that was an amazing treat to see that. And about Halloween too, one of the things that makes physical media so great is, all the varying different releases from different companies that come out offer you different things, like the TV cut, which gives you backdrop, more information, maybe even a little too much. But I love the sequence where after he sort of loses his fight in front of the board, and on his way out, he stops by Michael's room and goes in and basically just, tells him, well, you got everyone else fooled, but you haven't fooled me.
Mm-hmm.
I love the TV cuts. I love that extra, footage and insight, and, and it just gives you a lot to think about, but that's not possible if you're only living through streaming. You don't have all that.
Yeah. It's like, that's the thing though too, is like, I'm sure like probably one of my subscribers might look at, because when you held up, your copy of Halloween, you had the 25th anniversary DVD of it. And that's the thing, is like, oh, that's kind of a thing going on right now where everybody's attacking each other over formats. And it's like, I really try not to do that on my channel. It's like, it's like you have that, and you know what? That's a damn good addition you have there. Even if it is DVD, it's still a damn good addition. And that's one thing that always just irks me, is when, people who are, I mean, yes, I love 4K, but, I still buy movies on DVD. I still buy stuff on Blu-ray and everything else. So it's like, to me, yeah, it's more about the movie. It's not so much the format, you know. But unfortunately, like right now, especially, well, like we talked about the other night, on the chat, like right now they're talking, oh, we're getting ready to put Terminator out on 4K, and people are coming out like, I don't want it. After all this bullshit we got with the Cameron movies coming out on 4K, I don't want it. Everybody's been at each other's throats over a damn format and everything else. And so people are like, if Terminator comes out on 4K, I don't even want it at this point. Which I'm sure that's bull. Everybody's still going to go out and buy it because it's the Terminator. Everybody wants that movie.
Yeah.
But just, unfortunately, but I really like, oh God, I really tried not to do that, but it just, just, I don't know. It's just when you held up your DVD of it, it's like, hey, if that's the version you love, if that's, the one you want, hey, that's great. It's still physical media and everything else, so it is.
Well,
just,
I have it on 4K too, so I have it on 4K, and I have my old Blockbuster VHS copy somewhere on the bottom of my shelf. I can't remember the last time I put that in. And and I got that nice 10 film Halloween
Oh, yeah, the 10
that
film pack.
which is
Yeah.
nice. And but it's yeah, I mean, multiple formats. I mean, and for you, 4K, has been a neat little niche that you have sort of created for yourself. For me, it's more, like, I just happen to have it out. But if this ever got if stage fright ever got 4K treatment, I mean, that's one that's going in my collection.
You're going on that
You
one.
know, and me and you'd go back and forth a lot. You'll tell me, something's coming down the pike you think I'm going to be interested in. You know, and for me, Anthropophagus is one of my near and dear to my heart's Italian horror films. Going all the way back to the VHS renting days, and just the thought of that eventually sometime this summer finding its way into my very small but very, very personal 4K collection. I can't wait. I cannot wait to open that thing up. And there's certain scenes I've already been thinking about. I can't wait to see what it looks like. The day for night shots, how have these been corrected, and how is it going to sound, and all of that stuff. I mean, streaming just can't compete with regardless if it's something as nostalgic as putting a VHS tape in your machine, or getting the optimum quality that is hoped for by putting in a 4K disc and hearing it. Like, I think the Studio Canal, the Fog, the sound was just unreal to me listening to that, even more than the picture, which was great. But yeah,
But
it's
though too, it's like, would you ever want like try to, okay, I want to watch, say like Zombie on Netflix, and you start to watch, it's like, wait, where's the underwater scene with the girl and the zombie, and then the shark comes up, and then they come out and there's like, well, we decided, because she's topless, we decided we needed to cut that out because that could be offensive and it's misogynist and all this kind of stuff. It's like, oh, for God's sake, man, come on. It's like, and then it's like, you expect me to pay you all this money every month so you can censor everything I watch? The hell with that. And then they wonder why, like Netflix and Disney Plus and all that, they're wondering why this stuff isn't making any money, or people are dropping their subscriptions and stuff like this. It's like, you know, everybody's like, the big thing, like Splash. There's like, oh, for crying out loud, you had to go in there and digitally add hair to Daryl Hannah just because people might see her butt. It's like, so what? Hell, you go on, get on Facebook. People post pictures of women's butts on there all the time. It's not a big, and stuff like that. But and just ugh. And that was the thing too. It's just, yeah. I mean, I'm definitely, I watch some stuff on streaming and everything else, but just, I just do have a problem, I admit, with and the fact that they keep raising the prices and they keep wanting you to pay more and more money every month just so that they can sit here and decide what you watch,
yeah.
how you're going to watch it, and stuff
Well,
like that.
I've recently gotten rid of. I think at one point we had, and some of it was the effect of the COVID era, but I think we were up to 6 streaming platforms, and we've since got rid of 3 of them. One of them, which I got rid of my Shudder account, and as great as Shudder is, I don't miss it. The only thing that does bug me once in a while is if I'm on Prime, which is I was on Prime probably more than I'm usually on Prime, because obviously when we went to Florida, I couldn't take my collection with me.
Yeah.
So, looking for something to watch at night, and so I'm flipping, and of course I see Joe Bob Briggs and, rent or no, subscribe, and it's like, yeah, that's probably the only thing I really miss by giving up. But just by giving up 3 of the money that I think we're saving $30 some a month just by giving up 3 of these, and so that just leaves us with Prime, Hulu, which really acts as our TV service more than anything. And Netflix because of Stranger Things, really more than anything. But once that runs its course, my wife will probably say, let's get rid of that one too, and that'll save us even more money.
Yeah.
So you can't escape it completely, but
No.
um, but I wasn't sure how I would feel, leaving Shutter behind. But to be honest, I don't really. The only thing I miss is Joe Bob Briggs, and I love some of the stuff they've been doing with him. And I think he just renewed his contract to come back on there, and I love it that he's found a home there. And but it is what it is. But
I wish, especially since Shudder does a lot of, physical releases, they pretty much almost every movie or show that they do, they usually always put out a physical release. It would be nice if they could do like a season collection of Joe Bob. Here, Joe Bob, was it The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob season 1 or season 2
yeah,
or something like that? It's like you kind of wish they could do stuff like that. That would be awesome.
it would be. And I think the most unique thing they've done with that is they created the just Joe Bob line. So they just take all his segments and string them together. So instead of watching 3.5 hours, of a movie with his, segments built in, you just spend an hour, watch an hour of just his segments. And I think that was maybe the more, and I think I could be wrong, but I think the catalyst for that was Cannibal Holocaust. Because the first time I saw just Joe Bob, and I'm like, what is that? And then I realized what it was. It was for Cannibal Holocaust. And it must have been somewhat of a hit because next thing you know, I see, they got a season filled with just various, but also too, I've noticed too, if Shudder loses the rights to a particular film, you no longer have that as an option to watch with
Yeah.
his segment. So I mean that's the other downside of streaming too, is when these accounts lose rights to certain films and they've created something unique like the Joe Bob you know thing. That can be pretty disappointing, especially if for like for at least for me, if I'm going to do a podcast with Glenn or something, and I know Joe Bob, did a covered a movie. That's something, not anymore, but I mean, back, I would have watched it and just, for that content, what is, 'cause I know how serious he takes this stuff. But, that would be pretty disappointing if you thought, well, I know it's in there, I'll go listen to it, and then suddenly it's not there anymore because Shudder lost the rights to
Yeah.
whatever that. So, I mean, and I just, too, I don't know if it was, somebody was just telling me, I don't know if it was Glenn or someone was telling me that, is it Fumation distributor out of Japan. Apparently, I think they've gone under, and
Oh.
anyone who owned things from them lost them. And that is the worst case scenario. Is you build up a library and then suddenly you lose that library.
hmm Yeah, they just did that story just recently here was about Sony. If you bought a lot of movies and games on Sony digitally or something like that, you ended up losing a lot of that stuff. Everything. One thing I'm at,
The only way I'm losing this stuff, as you, is if somebody comes into our house, God forbid, and takes it.
yeah, yeah.
Or God forbid, some sort of catastrophic event. But other than that, as long as my players are playing, I can pull whatever off I want to watch. And
I know that this is I know this is kind of a controversial opinion, but the thing is like yeah, like you and me and Glenn and Jason, James, Sam, like we love this stuff. We love having it and everything else. But just the one thing is like I always tend to have a hard time when people come up to me and they're like, why do you buy this stuff, man? All this stuff, this crap is just cluttering up your house, and this, there's streaming and all this other kind of stuff. Why do you need that? Get rid of it. You don't need that. Just get streaming. You'll be fine, and all this other kind of stuff. It's always been my experience. They usually like people who tell you, to get rid of this stuff. these are usually the people, the first chance they get, they'll take it from you if they can get it. I have seen so many people who have tried to do, be like all socialist and everything else. Like, why do you need that book and everything else? It's like, why you need all these books, or why you need these movies, or why you need all this music or something like that. Then it's not long. They'll ask you if they could borrow it. And then when they borrow it, their definition of borrowing is you gave it to them. And it's like, you're lucky if you get it back. And if you do get it back, chances are it's destroyed. So you're gonna have to turn around and buy it again. So I'm just kind of like, like if somebody come into my place and they're all like, why do you have Halloween like this? You don't need that. Get rid of it. You could stream it and everything. I'd be like, don't goddamn touch this. I'm not joking. Do not touch this. This is mine. You can't have it. That's just always been my experience. It's just, so yeah. As I admit, I kind of tend to be untrustworthy when people tell me to give up my movies and books and CDs and whatnot and just go for streaming. It's like, no, I think I'll hang on to this. And by the way, keep your goddamn hands off of it. You're not taking it from me. So, but just, anyway.
Yeah. Well, so John Carpenter, any last quick thoughts?
No, just like I said, just it is kind of hard because you just kind of wish you could choose all of them.
Yeah.
Wish you could pick all of his movies. They're just all fantastic. But no, no, just this was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun doing this. I was like, hopefully, if you ever feel up to it, let's do this again.
Absolutely. And I love it that our top five didn't mirror one another. It kind of gave people an idea, reminded them, oh yeah, that was pretty good, or yeah, that. And I mean, I wasn't even thinking until you mentioned it in your five, just how good Christine really is. I mean, I sort of kind of lot, but as you were talking about, I was kind of remembering having, of course, seen it and like, yeah, damn, that was a good movie. That was really a good movie, but. You got five, and mine probably a little bit more cliche, but I don't know. I just, my love for, comfort food is a big thing. I love it. I love, these movies. My five, but the only one suspect for me is probably the five slot.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, I'll tell you one of the movies I'd actually thought about was Ghost of Mars.
Mm-hmm.
Thought about it because that is one movie that I've also, not like Prince of Darkness, but I've also been finding myself going to a little bit more than I have before. And it's even a movie, I only have it on DVD right now, but it's a movie that I would definitely consider upgrading if I saw it cheap enough, just to see, how that. And John apparently said that of all his movies, that one is one of the ones that he has worked hardest on,
I believe
and
it.
swore that he would never work that hard again.
Mm-hmm.
And which is kind of sad, but at the same time, you can kind of understand him. I think he's 76 now.
Yeah.
And I know he's been doing a lot of things and a lot of different things. And I just hope maybe we can get one more thing out of him before.
Well, what was that one, that Suburban Screams or
Yeah,
whatever?
that's the latest on his. I
Oh,
haven't seen it, or
I haven't had a chance to see it yet either. But yeah,
the
of course I
last.
would love to see it. But I just find that amazing, that the fact that like technology has come so far that he was able to direct the entire thing from his home at his computer. Like
Wow.
that's it. He's like, I didn't have to go on set. I didn't have, he's like, I'm an old man, it's like it's like getting harder for me to go out like at 3 o'clock in the morning on location and stuff like that. But he's like, the fact that he was able to sit there and just do the entire thing, direct it from his home, probably from like what we're doing, Skype or something like that. Just like, yeah, okay, yeah, do this and do that, make sure you get the shot here and all that. It's like, it's amazing to think that, like, technology actually has come that far. That's like something you think like, that seems like something I would see like in a sci-fi movie when I was a kid, you know. Like they would say like, from a 1950s sci-fi movie, it's like, oh, that's what's going to happen in the
Yeah.
1980s
Yeah.
or something like that. It's like, but here we are now, and you could direct an entire movie from the comfort of your own home. Like that is amazing when you think about it.
Well, the closest me and you had as kids to what we're doing right now was the mail segment in Fangoria, reading the mail that people wrote in, and I was just reading one. I had one of my magazines open the other day. I can't remember which one, but I remember somebody had actually wrote in from, I don't know, somewhere out of the Midwest, wrote in a quick little thing complaining just about that some of the pictures were just way too gruesome and that Fangoria actually needed to do more self-censorship. And I'm thinking to myself, what? I mean, I
Is
always
in the
wanted more when I was a kid. I could never get enough opening up. Going, like, I mean, it's just like, with their article on, I remember just as a kid, one of their articles that they wrote up on, uh, well, alternative title was Fall Break. It was actually, um, what was that movie? Crap. The Mutilator. Loved. I just some of the pictures and just and I just, oh man, I cannot wait to rent that on VHS. I still can't wait. And when I did it, it didn't disappoint. And I think I got the Arrow edition of that up on my shelf. But yeah, that was our outlet. That was our internet. That's what we had, and it was probably pretty far and few between that we could find friends close to us that actually shared that same level of enthusiasm.
And then the funny part is, though, is like a lot of people didn't, people who are not horror fans, especially back at that time, what they didn't understand is like, to us, we were all so wrapped up. We loved the special effects artists, the Dick Smiths, the Rob Bottin's, the Tom Savinis, the, who else? Like Screaming Mad George. I mean, you
Right.
name them, like loved you. And that was the thing. It's like, okay, it's like, the K and B's and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and that was one of the things, like, we knew. It's like we weren't going in there being like, oh, I want to see how grotesque and bloody and gory it is. It's like we knew the artists are at work. We want to see what are they going to do next. What is Tom Savini going to do in his next movie that is going to blow our minds? What is,
Yep.
Rick Baker just did easily the best werewolf transformation of all time. What's he going to do now? Or Dick Smith, he did The Exorcist and, The Godfather and all this stuff. Like, that was a lot of it too. It's like, to us, it's like, we were, fans of the magic magicians. It's
Yeah.
like Sean Cunningham always said, it's like these movies are basically magic tricks,
Yeah.
and it's like you go watch like Friday the 13th and you see Tom Savini's effects. It's like, you're shocked, but at the same time, you're delighted because you realize you watched basically a magic show. And that's the thing. We all loved the magic of it and just being taken away by it and stuff like that. And that was one of the things a lot of people never got about it. And I think it's like now, when, somebody, okay, say like a 20-year-old watches the thing and they sit there and they see like what Rob Bottin did, and they're going to be completely blown away by it, especially when they're realizing, whoa, they didn't have computers to do this stuff
Yeah.
back then. They had to do it all by hand. They had to, they had to figure out how to make this stuff work and build it and everything else. And, and I've even seen, I've talked to younger people too, who they realize like, okay, it's like, all right, yeah, I saw this effect in this movie. You could kind of tell it was a fake head or this or that. But at the same time, though, they're not sitting there like, oh my God, that's so dumb or anything. They understand it's like, okay, it makes sense. They didn't have the tools then to do it the way we would do it now.
Right.
So at least, it's nice to see that at least some young people do understand it and they catch on. And I think a lot of it, of course, is their parents and their grandparents introduce them to it and say, hey, it's like this thing here, like like the original Friday the 13th. Okay, they didn't have CGI back in the day. So Tom Savini had to sit there and figure out like, okay, I got to cut this girl's throat and make it look real. How am I going to do that? I got bury an axe in someone's head. How am I going to do that? I got to put an arrow through Kevin Bacon's neck, and it has to try to look as real as I can get, and all this stuff. It's like nowadays that's the thing, and I think they're starting to realize that too. Part of the fun is wondering how it was done, because nowadays it's like, okay, computers, whatever. There's no, so I think even some of the younger people that I talk to, at least, they're getting into it and they're starting to understand kind of the fun of it and everything. So And that was the
I'll
thing.
tell you probably. I'll tell you who probably helps a lot too. On our way down to Florida, I listened to back to back. I listened to Joe Rogan interviewed Rob Zombie, and when that show came to an end, we because he mentioned his name in the podcast with Rob, and then I'm like, oh, we got to hear this next. And so the next one we listened to Joe Rogan interviewed Rick Baker. That was a fantastic interview. And then I can't remember who it was, but we went to a third Joe Rogan who was movie related. Who was it? Oh, I know who it was. It was oh, come on, Downey Jr. there, Robert Downey Jr. Isn't that it?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and that was pretty. And he was just when he did that interview with Rogan, he was just fresh off of having finished up Endgame.
Mhm.
So that was sort of fresh, and so what was really fascinating about that conversation was, in the midst of it, you at a few times you're kind of thinking to yourself, dude's gonna be an Oppenheimer and get nominated for an Oscar. I'm like, dude, don't worry, man. You're gonna have a moment here out in front of you. And that, listening to the older podcasts like that are fun like that too. When you know what is lying ahead for some of these. But the Rick Baker one was pretty freaking awesome too. Just hearing his whole backdrop and that's the beauty of long form conversation these days, which in some ways is almost as good as Fangoria. You're getting to hear someone for a really long time just talk about what they love, and
Yeah.
but
Their
yeah,
own. It's not some edited article. You're hearing it from
right.
the horse.
Yeah, yeah. All right, man. You want to call it on this one, and
This was a lot of fun. I hope
it
we can
was a
do
lot
this.
of fun. I can't wait to see what the reaction is on these open weekends, and I know Glenn's already voiced some thoughts, what he might do, and I know you individually. I myself, I'm sure we'll do something, and it'll be interesting to see how these weekends and the reaction to it. So hopefully it's good, and hopefully we move body bags into kind of a sort of a new place.
Yeah.
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 So
Good idea. Yeah. Hopefully it's something everybody will enjoy. So hopefully we keep everyone entertained.
So where can people find you?
They can find me at my channel, Tats. The link is going to be in the description. So I think they're going to be able to find you too. That link is in the description. I can talk.
VHS82 apostrophe. Yeah, yeah. And of course, body bags. You both do body bags and do our own things. And also, too, I podcast with Glenn, our Monday reviewer. So I think the last one we just did was a show on Das Boot and the remake to All Quiet on the Western Front. That was a pretty little bit out of the horror genre, but it was an epic conversation just to talk about two great war movies like that. So yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how all of this goes. So all right, man.
So,
All right,
thanks.
guys. So whenever we do another one, we'll see you then.
Have a good night, everybody. Hope you enjoyed.
We might be useful to you.